The other day I was watching a Dice Tower video about their top 10 favorite pick up and deliver games. And I started looking at the games in my collection and realized I actually have 10 games here that are built around the pick up and deliver mechanism. And not only that, but I don't think there's another major gameplay mechanism for which I could find 10 games in my current collection, which goes to show that I think I must really enjoy that particular mechanism. Now, it's a wonderfully descriptive name for the mechanism, and basically what it means is in the game, you are controlling a character or a piece or whatever. You have to go to a location, pick something up, take it to another location on the map, drop it off, and perhaps continue doing that in order to achieve certain goals. That's why it's called pick up and deliver. It's pretty straightforward. But what I like about it is it creates a very dynamic board situation. It's similar to the reason that I enjoy games where you start off with something small and get to build up something big and interesting, in that it feels like you're not just being static, maybe converting one color cube to another type of cube, but you're actually getting out there on the board, moving around, making things happen. And so as a result, I tend to be pretty drawn to this particular mechanism. So without any further ado, let's get into my top 10 games that feature pick up and deliver as a mechanism. These 10 games are ranked in order of least enjoyed to most enjoyed games in my collection, although since they are all currently still owned by me, they are all games that I do quite enjoy. That being said, there are a few titles here that are going to be in my next game auction, so they will be leaving my collection. But for now, I'm going to go from 10 to 1 from my least enjoyed to my favorite game of the bunch. Starting with number 10 here, we have a game called Via Nebula, which I mainly have for the sake of my kids at this point, although I haven't yet tried playing the game with them. It is a game that is quite simplistic, which I think is a little bit different than being simple. There are games that are simple to learn but have a lot of depth to them, and then there are games like this one that are relatively simplistic in how they play out. So maybe not quite enough depth there to really hold my interest over a lot of plays, but hopefully one that I'll get to enjoy playing with the kids at some point. It's as if they took a train game along the lines of Railways of the World or Steam and condensed it down into a very streamlined version of those sort of route connecting type of games. And although it's only number 10 in my list, I certainly haven't disliked any of my plays of the game. Moving on then to number 9, we have a tiny little game with a big name called the Great Heartland Hauling Company. This is the pick-up-deliver mechanism at its most stripped down and basic form. Although in its card-based play, it's slightly reminiscent of Ticket to Ride in the obtaining of cards and using them to do what you need to do. This is another one I'm hanging on to try with the kids at some point, and there is another game that I often mention alongside this particular game as being very comparable in terms of its ease of play and sort of pure pick up and deliver gameplay. But that other one's going to be coming up on my list shortly, so we'll set that aside. And we'll move on to number 8, which is a cooperative game called Flashpoint Fire Rescue. The pick up and deliver portion of this game is an important aspect of the game, although there are a lot of other things going on around it. As firefighters cooperating to save a house from burning down and rescuing the people inside, one of the things that players do with their action points is run around inside the building trying to find and rescue the people and the pets that are inside the building. So players have to get in there with their firefighters, pick up the person or animal, and physically take them out of the house to save them. It's a great cooperative game that has a ton of expansions, of which I have some but not all of them. And it's another one I've enjoyed with my kids, which seems to be a common theme, at least early on in this list. Well, maybe not games I've actually played with the kids, but either have played or want to play with them, just to clarify that point. Number 7 comes in a tiny package as well, and it is a game I just recently talked about in my Overlooked Games video, and this is a little game called ProHe, in which players are attempting to smuggle goods, including contraband goods, under the noses of other players who in turn are trying to catch them in the act. So the pick up and deliver in this game is very much a thematic thing as opposed to a physical thing. There's not a map that you're running around actually collecting goods and taking them to another location on the map. Rather, it's more the fact that players are collecting the cards, so they're picking up the goods, and then at various points they're having to deliver them by playing those cards. So while there is very much that pick up and deliver aspect, it's not in the same sense as pretty much all the rest of the games on this list. My number 6 game is the other one I was talking about with the great Heartland Hulling Company, and that is Perryrhoden, the Cosmic League. Yet another very stripped down pick up and deliver game, but one that's really cleverly implemented in the way that players are not only sort of flying from planet to pick up and deliver goods, but in the process they're also using the money they acquire by doing that, which also double as victory points, in order to upgrade their spaceship and get better at what they're doing. In all those ways, it's very comparable to the great Heartland Hulling Company, despite the fact that this one happens in a science fiction space world, whereas Heartland is more of a real-world trucking sort of theme. Now, if I had to pick between the two, obviously, since this is a couple of spots higher on the list, I slightly prefer Perryrhoden, the Cosmic League. However, player count is also an issue. Perryrhoden is strictly a 2-player game, whereas the great Heartland Hulling Company is a 2 to 4-player game. So if you want just a maybe slightly better game, but only for 2 players, consider Perryrhoden. If you want an almost as good game, but plays up to 4 players, have a look at Heartland. But we'll set this aside for now and go on to another strictly 2-player game that's in roughly the same size box, and that is a brilliant little game called Acrotiri. This game has such a clever and interesting mix of mechanisms, of which the pick up and deliver is only one of a few other major mechanisms, but it's the mechanism by which players earn income in the game. They have to go pick up some goods and bring them back to the central island in order to make money, which allows them to power the expeditions that are required to score the victory points that you need. So it's a very interesting intertwining of different mechanisms that are used in order to work towards the ultimate goal of discovering temples and getting those all-important victory points. I really can't speak highly enough of this really unique 2-player game. I've heard people say that the cover of it is pretty uninspiring, and that might be true, but behind it is a very unique game, unlike other games that are out there. If I had to compare it to one, I would compare it to Tobago, for anyone who's familiar with that system, in terms of the way that you have to discover how... It's so hard to explain, but if you know Tobago, you sort of know what I'm talking about in terms of how the discovery happens in the game. Moving on to number 4, which is a re-implementation of a game I used to have called Himalaya. This one is Lords of Zidit. This is all about the pick up and deliver. You gotta pick up various soldiers, warriors, and take them to where monsters are located in order to defeat the monsters. What's particularly clever about this game is the way the scoring happens. There are 3 goals you're sort of working towards, and then at the end of the game when it's scored out, basically one at a time, the player who has scored the lowest in each of the 3 categories gets eliminated until you get to the final category and see who's scored the best in that final category. It's really cleverly done, and the components of Lord of Zidit are off the charts, with the various plastic warriors and the buildings and everything else that's here. I don't like the theme quite as much as I enjoyed the whole Himalaya theme of yak caravans in the mountains. This is more sort of generic fantasy-ish, but the production quality is just really so well done. And the couple of rule tweaks they did really improved the game too. So Lords of Zidit is my number 4. Getting into the top 3 now. At number 3 we have the very first game I ever kickstarted on the same day as a Ryan Lockett game. What was the one about the planets and stuff? Anyways, there were 2 games that I kickstarted on the same day, the first time I ever used Kickstarted, and Kings of Air and Steam was one of them. So this is going back a ways, but it is one of the more clever games where pick up and deliver is really the central mechanism of the game. Again, as with something like deck building, where my favorite games are the ones where deck building is a key feature of the game, but not the only thing. So I'm thinking about games like Clank or The Quest for El Dorado, where in the case of The Quest for El Dorado, there's a race happening, or in Clank, there's kind of a race, but there's a push your luck element of getting victory points. But they're not like Dominion, which is really pure deck building. There's other game built around the mechanism. It's the same with, I guess, the pick up and deliver, where there are a couple of games lower on the list where it is very much a pure pick up and deliver game, like the great Heartland Hauling Company and Perryrhoden. But the ones that are higher on the list incorporate other clever aspects and mechanisms. In Kings of Air and Steam, there's a whole interesting market and economy thing going on, as well as opportunities to sort of upgrade your airship and your train and the whole economic engine you're trying to get going. There's an interesting intertwining of tasks that need to be performed by the players. They got to go out with their airship to pick up some goods, drop them off at their train, use their train to deliver them through cities to the city that needs the goods, and then thus earn some income. So there's a lot of interesting things going on in this game, and this is one that I can't remember now if it made my overlooked gems video. If it didn't, it was close to the top 10 overlooked games, because I think this one is one that hasn't gotten a lot of attention, to the point where the expansion for it failed on Kickstarter, which really broke my heart because I was really looking forward to an expansion for that particular game. But anyways, my top two. My number 2 is the biggest, heaviest game on the list, and that is Merchants and Marauders, where players are playing as merchants and or pirates. This is a long game, a complex game. It's not for the faint of heart, but it is so heavily thematic. It is definitely the most thematic pirate game on the market, for my money anyways. And it's just a game that I've always enjoyed playing, although it's been way too long since I've actually had a chance to play it. Of course, the picking up and delivering of goods is only a part of the wider narrative of the game. There's lots of other cool piratey things going on, but it is an important aspect. So that's why Merchants and Marauders is my number 2 game. And, funnily enough, my number 1 game, I didn't even realize, is one that I just mentioned. And that is The Quest for El Dorado, but specifically it is The Quest for El Dorado, The Golden Temples, which is a standalone game and an expansion for The Quest for El Dorado. The original game wasn't a pick up and deliver game at all. It was purely a race based around deck building. However, the Golden Temples adds an aspect of pick up and deliver where players have to get colored gems and bring them to a certain location as part of the race that they're trying to complete before other players are able to do so. So, now that I think of it, not only is this my top 1 or 2 deck building games, I'm not sure if Clank would beat it out, probably would, to be honest, so it's probably my number 2 deck building game, but it now classifies as my number 1 pick up and deliver game as well. So before I wrap it up though, I gotta throw an honorable mention to an old favorite called Railroad Tycoon, which was then renamed Railways of the World. In a somewhat similar vein to Via Nebula, that was a game where players had to build routes of connecting railways and then use the railways to deliver goods to cities that needed those goods. But it was a much bigger and more complex game than Via Nebula is. But it's one that I recently sold, so I no longer have it. I just thought that since it was an old favorite for such a long time, I thought I should mention it. But how about you? What pick up and deliver games do you particularly enjoy? Please do let me know in the comments so that I can pick up some new games and deliver them to my house. Hey, it's Josh. You know why I'm here. Sometimes you just need that friendly reminder to give a little thumb up, to subscribe to the channel, to share the video with somebody who would enjoy it. Thanks so much for watching. Cheers. And they were doing their top 10 pick up and deliver games. Number 10 is a game that I keep ease of play. This is another ease of play and kind of, so there's not an earning points. Is this a point-based game? I should probably look that up.
Can I be spinning the computer?
Yep. Did you put your dishes away?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Hello. Hello.
Hi, everybody.
I want it. All right, thank you.
I want to watch your video.
No, you need to go upstairs, please.
Okay.
Thank you.